Okay, today we're going to do common denominators and equivalent fractions. It's lesson 6.4 in our math, and we're going to discover how you can rewrite a pair of fractions so that they have a common denominator. Sarah planted 2 1-acre gardens. One had 3 sections of flowers and the other had 4 sections of flowers. She plans to divide each garden into more sections so they have the same number of equal-sized sections. How many sections will each garden have? Okay, we're going to work with finding a common denominator today. Today, a common denominator is a common multiple of 2 or more denominators. So when we skip counted, by 2s, 5s, 6s, 4s. Those are the multiples of those numbers, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. Those are multiples of 2. And so we're going to take our denominators, write out some multiples, and try to find one that they have in common. It says multiply the denominator. Multiply the denominator to find a common denominator. Okay, the first thing we're going to do is divide each third into fourths. So this one is thirds. So we are going to divide that into fourths. So you should be able to put a line down the center of it, of each one. And then down the center of each of those. And just in this one, because this is the garden spot that was divided into thirds. When you've completed that, you divide this one that's broken into 4 parts. You divide that, each of those, into thirds. So it should look something kind of like this. So it says multiply the denominators to find a common denominator. What is our denominator in 1/3?
3.
What's our denominator in 1/4?
4.
And 3 times 4 is
12.
12. So that can be a common denominator between 1/3 and 1/4. Write 1/3 and 1/4 as equivalent fractions using the common denominator. So we want the denominator now to be 12. What did I have to do to 3 to get it to be 12?
Multiply it by 4.
Multiplied it by 4. So if I multiply my denominator times 4, I've got to multiply my numerator times 4. So now I have 1/3 is equivalent to 4/12. That means they are equal. What do I have to multiply 4 by to get to 12?
3.
3. If I multiply my denominator, I have to multiply my numerator. So 1 times 3 is 3. So both gardens will have, what is 4 plus 3?
7 twelfths. 7 12.
So both gardens will have 12 sections. That's one way to find a common denominator, is just to multiply your 2 denominators. And most of the times that works pretty good. But when it doesn't work good is when you have like 12 and 16 for your denominators. Then that gets to be a pretty big denominator, and so you might want to find something smaller, which is what we're going to do now under the another way. So we're still working with Sarah's garden. It says make a list of the first 8 non-zero multiples. This is like on our show what you know. So they give you the first 3 of 1/3. The denominator was 3. So 3, 6, 9, then what?
12, 15, 18, 21, 24.
And 4, 8, 12,
16,
20, 24,
28,
8, and 32. Okay? Circle the common multiples.
12.
Here's 12 and 12. Were there any before that?
No.
Are there any after that?
Yes. 20, 24.
24. So 12 and 24. Use one of the common multiples as a common denominator to write the equivalent fractions for 1/3 and 1/4. Now, you could sure use 24, but the higher you go, if there's one lower than that, the bigger and the higher you go, the greater the chances you're going to have to simplify your answer. So I would always try and choose the least common multiple that they have. So 1/3 is equal to, again, 4/12. Because if we multiply 3 times, we have to multiply 3 times 4 to get 12, so we have to multiply 1 times 4. And 1/4 is equal to 3/12. So both gardens can have 12ths, or they could divide out and have 24 sections. Okay, we're going to list the least common or the common multiples of 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, 24, and 28. Did I get those?
Yep.
6, 12, 3 times 6 is 18, 4 times 6 is 24, 5 times 6 is 30, and 6 times 6 is 36. Here we go. Here's our least common one. We could have stopped writing right there when we wrote 12.
Yep.
Okay. Another common multiple would be 24. But it asked us to find the least common multiple. And what did I tell you about using the least common multiple? You'll have less chance of having to simplify. Okay. So the least common denominator of 3/4 and 1/6 is 12. Okay, this is step 2 of the example on page 256. It says use the least common denominator. Write an equivalent fraction. What did we find for our least common denominator? 12, right? Back in step 1. What number multiplied by the denominator of the fraction will result in the least common denominator? So you'll see here they set it up 3/4 is equal to so many 12ths. And then they go, well, 4 times, what is 12? 3.
12.
So they have to take the denominator and the numerator times 3, which is 9. So we would end up with 9/12. Okay? And 6 times what is 12?
2.
So if I do it on the bottom, I gotta do it on the top. 2 times 1 is 2, and 2 times 6 is 12. Now we are, so 3/4 can be rewritten as 9/12, and 1/6 can be written as 2/12. Now I like to set my problem up like this. If I'm going to add or subtract, I like to do this and put what I found for my common denominator over there. And even if I'm not going to add or subtract, that way it's not in the middle of my work. And then I can say 4 times what is 12?
3.
And we know that that is 3. And I can say 6 times what is 12? And that would be 2. And 1 times 2 is 2. So I ended up with 9/12 and 2/12. So they're going to go back to that strategy where we just multiply 3 times 4 to get 12. Because this says multiply the denominator. So 6 times 9. What is 6 times 9?
54.
54. So that's what they want us to use for our denominator. It's not the least common denominator by any means. So if I have 1/6 and I want that to equal 54, what do I have to multiply it by? 9, right?
Got 4.
Yep. Okay. So I have 9/54. Okay. And then if I have 1/9 and I want it to equal 54, I would have to multiply that by 6. And I would get 6/54. Okay? So that's one way. What would be our other way? We could write out the multiples of 6 and 9, right? 6, 12, 18, 24. Now we can write the multiples of 9. There's our least common multiple. So we could have set them equal to 18. So 1/6 times something is going to be equal to something over 18. 6 times what is 18?
3.
3. So I could have 3/18. Or I could say 1/9 times something is equal to 18. And what times 9 is 18? 2. So I have 2/18. If I leave those, like I said, if you use 54, you're for sure going to have to, if you're adding, subtracting, multiplying by, you're sure going to have to simplify those answers. All this lesson is about is finding the common denominator. So we're not adding it. We're not subtracting it. We're just finding that common denominator. We can multiply this and have a common denominator of what?
15.
5 times 4. 20, right? Okay, let's set them. Let's do our multiples of 5. 5, 10, 15, 20. Well, there we hit 20. We know that is 4, 8, 12, 16, 20. So in this case, our least common denominator is 20, the one that we could multiply it by to get it, or if we write out our multiples. Okay? So if I'm going to make 3/5 into 20ths, what am I going to multiply 5 by, Faith, to get 20? 5 times what is 20? 4. If I do it in my denominator, I have to do it in my numerator. So 3 times 4 is 12. So 3/5 is equal to 12 20ths. If I'm going to do 1/4 and I want to set it equal to 20, what am I going to multiply it by, Jay Sean? 4 times what is 20? 5. So 1/4 is equal to 5/20. Now, when we're finding these equivalent fractions, are we going to simplify them?
No.
No, because if we simplify them, what? We're going to get right back to our 1/4. So all we're working on is finding common denominator.